the future of blockchain and capital markets. And, you know, some people might think that there's some nepotism here, but there is no nepotism. Genevieve Decter has been an instrumental force in her own father's life, who many of you know, and it adds a lot of credibility to everything that's going on today. Can I bring up Michael Decter, please? Michael, if you wouldn't mind coming up. What an excellent gentleman. They didn't give us stairs, Michael, so let me help you. Okay. Michael Decter, everybody. And on the panel that Michael will moderate, can we please bring up Bradley Fletcher? Bradley, come on up here. Richard, Carleton, Joseph Weinberg, and Gorav Seth. If you wouldn't all mind coming out, and I'll pass the microphone over to Michael. And listen to this, because these are about worlds colliding. So I think it's a very important piece.
Hey, thank you very much. And let me, while everyone's getting seated and grabbing a microphone, just say a couple of things about my daughter Genevieve, who you've had a great deal of chance to see. She worked with me for 8 years at our family investment firm. And almost 2 years ago to the day, she said to me, I want to go out on my own. I want to build my own business. It's been great working for you, but I want to go out and change the world. So, Genevieve, I think you're doing exactly what you said you were going to do, and you're doing it with great grace and style. So, and it was very kind of you to let me come, and I will do my best to get a good discussion going here, knowing that you're all eager to have your main course. But I will start, because I think you always have to start with a funny story, and I will date myself, because this is a story about Winston Churchill. So if you'll bear with me, think of the UK, the Parliament of Westminster, the birth of Western democracy. It's 1938. Clement Attlee is the socialist Prime Minister of England, and he goes, as men do, to the washroom, and he goes, there's a row of urinals from here to that wall, and very long, not quite that long, and he goes to the first one, and he's there. Winston Churchill, who's then leader of the Conservative opposition, comes in, sees the Prime Minister, and goes down to the far end to use the urinal there. So Attlee says, feeling a little standoffish, are we today, Winston? And Churchill replies, no, Clement. The problem with you socialists is every time you see something big, you want to nationalize it. I'll let you think about that for a minute. We're hoping that's not how the future of blockchain and cryptocurrency plays out. I'm delighted to be moderating a panel with such talented people tonight. I warned them in advance. I was only going to ask them 2 questions, and I'm going to ask them the first of those questions and let them each take a crack at it. So the first question, if I can read it, is what advice do you have for those entrepreneurs and businesses wishing to undertake issuance of a security token on approach, on timing? So you have in the audience tonight many people who I'm sure, after Trevor's very eloquent presentation today and the many other presentations, are just itching to issue a security token, get it listed somewhere, raise equity, raise debt. So what advice do you have? And I think we'll start with our 2 exchange people. So Richard, do you want to get us going on behalf of CSE?
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. It's obviously a pleasure. There we go. It's a pleasure to be here in the Bahamas, and thanks to the folks from Great Capital and Polymath for the opportunity to speak with so many exciting entrepreneurs and interested investors and talented technology people in this space. My advice to the entrepreneurs is basically this. Securitized tokens are going to be how the securities industry deals with everything a lot sooner than most people believe. 2 weeks ago, we announced at the Canadian Securities Exchange that we are going to start a program to list securitized tokens in the near future. and we are going to provide a real-time clearing and settlement facility, which we have to go through a very, very invasive regulatory process before we get it up and running. And with that, we are going to extend the benefits of blockchain technology and the features that are included in a security token to the broader investment public. We think this is actually one of the most exciting things. And it's not just going to be limited to the technology folks, the early adopters, the people here who get it. It's actually going to be the old economy that also benefits from the introduction of securitized tokens. I get back to Toronto. Brady's going to be at PDAC next week with us, the biggest mining show in the world. I've already got miners approaching us to structure royalty deals and to provide asset-backed gold, silver, copper-backed instruments using securitized tokens. So the creativity has already started. It's going to take months at this point, not years, for us to have these the clearing and settlement system in place. We're obviously in a neck-and-neck race with the folks at the Barbados Stock Exchange to implement a system. Australia has already announced that they will be converting to a blockchain-based clearing and settlement system. And eventually, the rest of the developed world is going to catch up. So I think the issue here is a little bit more patience, but we're getting there. And as I say, the business leaders, I think, in the securities industry believe very strongly that this is the future, and they, in fact, are piling on to support our efforts and those of other people in the space to basically change the way we do business.
Great. Brady, do you want to go next?
Sure. So, is that on? Maybe use that one. Sure, let's pass. All right, let's pass it around. So this is really exciting, and honestly, I'm a computer engineer by background. Got into investment banking, raised a ton of money for a lot of early stage companies, and have always been focused on those issuers who are actually at that nascent phase of figuring out what their business plan was, how to raise money around it, how to communicate that to the broader investment audience, and how to build. And so that's when I got asked to come join the venture and run the venture exchange in Canada. You know, we are the preeminent platform globally for venture stage capital formation. $6.1 billion raised last year, 1,645 listed issuers. We did over 1,500 transactions. And what we're here to do, and you look at the likes of Hive that have gotten up and listed with us and grown quickly, the likes of Hut 8 that have announced that they're coming to trade on Tuesday, all of those companies are leveraging the capital markets to grow and do interesting things in blockchain and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And so I'm really excited to be here talking about what we do. But Rich, I got to question you a little bit on some of the questions with the press release, because your press release, I believe, wasn't about trading tokenized securities through the CSE. It's about setting up a new system that you're going to trade one specific crypto exchange through, right?
Geez, Brady, I thought we weren't going to fight tonight. That was for next week. In any event, what we're doing is tokenized security is a security. Yep. To list them, they have to be issued by a reporting issuer. This is all basic securities law. Theoretically, we could list them now. You could list them now. The problem is, of course, that wouldn't provide the benefits of the smart contract, which is the representation of the equity or debt instrument that's contained there, through to the investors. You know, we wouldn't be taking advantage of the power of the technology. So we are going to have a clearing and settlement facility which sits alongside the Canadian Securities Exchange, which will hold these security tokens. And we will be deploying a private blockchain-based network with nodes and all of the dealers and various other intermediaries who are involved in the process. And clients of those dealers will be able to buy the tokens. And the record of those, the beneficial ownership, will be maintained in the private ledger that, as I say, leverages all the technology that almost everybody here understands better than I do.
Okay, I'm not going to let you guys dominate this. I want to get Joseph into this, because he's not only an advisor to the Ontario Securities Commission, FinTech board, but also chair of Shyft. So very, very involved. So jump in.
Yeah, so I guess like my advice to entrepreneurs are more of a question of what markets are ready to handle any of these types of technologies. So I think that from a Canadian perspective, and I think a global perspective, people are working on it. But I think that the reality is, just like cell phones leapfrogged the requirements for infrastructure, is that you look at markets today like Barbados or Bermuda that's coming out pretty quickly with the ability to rapidly innovate and move quicker than the majority of large-scale Western economies. And so that's my perspective on understanding your timing and really where things are today and where things are going. And ensuring that you have the right timing for the market that you're trying to acquire. Like, liquidity doesn't work if you have no ability to access liquidity. And I think that the exchanges, even on the panel today, aren't actually ready or equipped to tokenize things, right? Like, the token requirements of an exchange are actually far different than the way that any exchange functions today. And that's not to say that you can't, create that very quickly. But the requirements of a traditional exchange are fundamentally different from a technical perspective than the way that a Bitcoin exchange works in the majority of the world today. So where are you able to do that with enough, depth and coverage to make it actually work? This is a big question.
Okay. Gorav, Seth is with Richardson GMP, and Richardson GMP has become a fairly major player. I know the Galaxy Digital deal was a very large deal, and you're head of the venture capital group. So how do you see this? You've got people banging on your door wanting capital, and what's your advice to them?
So I think entrepreneurs need to really look at their business first. I think the days of crowdfunding and like issuing securities off a white paper and raising $10 or $20 million, those days are gone. I think that you need to have a really good sense of your technical team and know your business before you go out to fundraise. I think
They like that one.
Yeah. I think you need to have your team in place, have a good grasp of the regulatory regime, understanding the needs of your business. Timing should be around the capital requirements of your business, and going out to market to issue a security should come based on the needs of your business. A lot of people are just trying to exploit the market because of the visibility of the huge appreciation in some of these cryptocurrencies, and I think there's a lot of information asymmetry between the average investor and those that are actually in the space, and I think that leads to a lot of fairy dust that seem to be remnant of many of the ICOs coming to market today, and even some of the public companies. And I think you need to be vigilant to differentiate yourself and have a business and a technology that underpins whatever you're trying to do before you go to raise capital.
Okay. Let me throw a second question out, and then we're going to wind this up and let people get to their dinner. Second question would be, in your view, how ready is the Canadian financial market sector at a regulatory, at a securities exchange, really at every level? How ready are we? What we've got, I think, is some first mover advantage over larger places, maybe some disadvantage over smaller places. But your view is Canada ready? Are we moving quickly enough to really become a strong capital market for the tokenized securities? So anywhere, well,
go ahead, Brady.
Okay.
Sure. I've got the mic. Yep. So I've just been trying to get another word in. So I think it's really interesting to look at, right? And when you look at where we're at in Canada and how quickly we've moved, in my talk today, I mentioned RTOs and the pace at which we deploy capital. It has forced the commissions to get up to speed quickly. And I sit with the BCSC and the ASC, and we have people from TMX on the Launchpad committee with OSC for being able to advise them on what we're doing next and how to adopt technologies like this. And I think, what we really all here need to figure out is you've got $69 trillion at the end of 2016 that were in the global equity market. And what we're trying to do is figure out how to bring some of those dollars down to the companies that are growing and that are recognizing the efficiencies of blockchain and cryptocurrency. And how do we bring all of those global equity dollars down to this market? And I think Canada is the first mover in the space. But what we need to do is figure out not how do we set up side exchanges or side clearinghouses, but how do we bring cryptocurrencies in. Somebody give them some boxing gloves. Okay. But what we've got to do is figure out how to bring how do we bring the crypto actually into the mainstream and into that $69 trillion market, because there's a huge number of companies that are getting started, getting founded, raising massive amounts of capital, and we're here to help them all grow.
Okay, Richard, do you want to take a shot at the sidecar?
No.
Okay.
No, the answer is way more ready than people think. So as I've been walking around Canada over the last couple of weeks, the reception from the dealer community, and not just from the independents, like Gorav's firm at Richardson GMP, but even some of the bank-owned financial institutions, has been absolutely astonishing. Because again, they understand that this is the direction that we are going. And we actually do have the technology to make the integration relatively straightforward. And people haven't grasped that that is in fact the case. So you're right, I'm not looking to solve everybody's problems at this point. We're not trying to boil the CDS ocean at this point. We've got to start somewhere. We have to put a stake in the ground and we have to build from there. And I'm hoping that before the year is out, we will have the first company up and the ICO trading.
Joseph.
Yeah. So I think coming from we've been in the Bitcoin space for, since 2011, 2012. And so a lot of the issues that I think we're seeing be largely, fixed, or that to say that the regulators are ready, is largely on the backs of, the early people that are much in this crowd, and the work that we've done to make sure that the financial system and the regulatory environment is ready to move from this perspective. I would say that the Canadian ecosystem from the OSC and all of other regulatory bodies is very ready, but I think that's not with a lot of hard work of others. And I think in the next coming weeks, actually, you'll probably see some massive movements across the Canadian ecosystem that will further define that across, financial systems, the institutions, and the bodies, that we're sitting with today. So I think that we're more than ready to go, and it's a question of can we, work with after you've started to move. Are you ready and equipped to do that? That's the next phase in question.
Gorav, do you want to?
Yeah, I think Canada's very well positioned, given the exchanges here have been have been structured to capitalize early stage mining companies and oil and gas companies, and the P&Ls and balance sheets of many of these blockchain based businesses have been ripe to be able to exploit our Canadian capital markets. So I think Canada is well positioned, but it's still early days. This is really the internet in 1994, 1995. The average investor doesn't really understand what blockchain is. I think Bitcoin has been, grabbing the attention of many people because of, the huge ascent in terms of value. And most people think Bitcoin when they think blockchain. So they really can't differentiate between, various cryptocurrencies and the underlying technology. And, so I spent several years at GMP Securities and Investment Banking before I came over to run Richardson GMP's venture capital group. So on the institutional world, you see some institutions are starting to dabble and test their feet in the water here. The only really cash-flowing entities are the miners at this point. And a lot of the other businesses, are trading off blue sky type projections. On the venture world, we have a $30 billion retail platform, and we'd launched First Block Entire System, which was a long-only Bitcoin fund, really to give the average retail investor exposure to the space. And, I got calls from, advisors, from some of our family office clients asking, A to Z on what this was. And, it took a lot of hand-holding to get guys over the line. and to even buy into that. So a lot of these other blockchain companies are light years ahead of what the average investor does. So I think most of this, the constituency of the capital base for most of these companies is retail, with some family office and very little institutional. And because of the general volatility in the market, you have a lot of people day trading this to exploit the market. So I think you're going to see a lot of companies disappear over the next 12 to 48 months, and we'll see what shakes out from that. But there's going to be a lot of stock promoters making a lot of money, and a lot of
Somebody back there was howling at me.
and it muddies the waters for some of the true issuers that are coming to market and really have real technology stacks and real businesses. So I think people will get more sophisticated, but it's still very, very early.
Grab that. Let me end on an optimistic note. I think what we've heard here is that with a few cautions, Canada is ready, and things are going to move pretty quickly this year. I want to ask you to thank our panelists, give them a round of applause for their help, and let me also thank them personally. So, thank you.